Hello, my name is Emily and I have an Etsy store named Yesterdaysstash. And where I got the name Yesterdaysstash is because about 30 some years ago we were getting ready to disband or move the old home place where my father had been as a child. And the latter part of the time for that house, a lot of spinsters and some teachers lived there, and so drawers and drawers were full of all kinds of products that fabrics and yarns and tatting and knitting and all sorts of laces and where they made their own fancy dresses, so they would be that fancy fabric and such. And it was just a case of us deciding whether to throw it out or whether to sell it or whether to divide it up, and that's what we did. So I brought it all home and I put it in a drawer or so, and I wondered over the years what was I going to ever do with that, with this over the years I've tried to do different things with it, but just nothing struck me until about 5 years ago when I discovered junk journals. I'm also very fortunate that where we live, I live in the Triangle of North Carolina, and there is a huge warehouse or reuse art supply, furnishings, home, everything that you can think of, furniture, Christmas decorations, desk product, office wear, and things. And one half of it is full of things for the home. It's full of fabrics and full of bolts of like upholstery fabric and all sorts of things. So the scrap exchange, you can go and you can buy things really, really cheap there. So I have really been able to embark on this junk journal with two advantages, and that's having drawer after drawer of a bunch of things, and then picking up some scrapbooking and ephemera and things of sewing supplies and such at Scrap Exchange. So it's really been an interesting ride so far, and I've decided, to start an Etsy store. So I'm new to the Etsy store and the YouTube community. This is a journal that I put together, and it uses like if you go to a fabric store or to a store and you want to pick out some fabric or whatever. This is actually samples of, I don't know, leather, naugahyde, whatever this is, and it sure does make a nice side for a journal. But I've been able to pick up tons of these for this one. It was $1. Some of them that are larger are like $3. But it's really been, you go there and get ideas is what you do. So I have put together this, and then this front is actually from an old magazine set, and I do have quite a few old magazines that I can show you. This is another thing that I was able to bring from the old home place, and plus I've collected for all these years. And this is the Mentor Rugs and Rug Making, and it is an actual expert wrote and put this together. The Mentor is established for the development for people who are interested in art, literature, science, history, nature, and travel. And I guess it's kind of like back in the day, this is 1914, that these were like correspondence courses, like if you really wanted to learn more about it. So I was able to, they had 4 or 5 or full pages of color of these rugs. This particular rug is a Kurdistan, so that's the name of the journal. I have decided to put the journals, label them by a name that is associated with it. And so in this case, this is a Kurdistan because that's the type of Persian rug or rug that it is. But like this one is music, so I could make a journal on music. This is on piano. I could make one on piano. This is just an example of an old magazine. This one is 1893, and it's the Century magazine. I've got to use these. I've got to make some use. They can't just continue to sit in my drawer forever. So that's how I've come up with this particular journal. And then what I have done right here, this is a soft bound journal, so I like to put something hard in it so that the writer or the person who writes in the journal can actually have a hard surface to write on. So I just put it like that, and then I have the word journal on the back with the definition of the word journal. So this actually is a piece of wallpaper. You can get wallpaper samples also at Scrap Exchange. This is an actual card, a greeting card from time gone by that I have found that was in my stash over the years. So just to let you know that most of the pages in this book are being using DCWV stack called Victorian Treasures. It has some, not my favorite, but it did have some very, nice looking pages in it. Maybe it's more on the steampunk side, which is kind of not my area of interest. Most of what I'm interested in is British Lit, and Jane Austen and the Regency period. So a bit of every, can't help it, every journal that I put together has some sort of, something from England or something, from the Jane Austen period, the Regency, the Edwardian, the Victorian, and that sort of thing. So that is, the pages here came from that, and I have just put some different tags in here. There are actually 44 pages here, so front and back is 88, and then 28 of them are for journaling. So you can actually take all of the little tags and things out and have a fairly flat book. This particular one is three signatures, which is actually just a little bit aggressive, or a little bit ambitious for this particular, the size and the daintiness, the soft cover of the book. I also have 38 tags in here that can be pulled out and used. There's also things that are in the book that can be used for journaling. So just to look through some of the pages, where the only thing about this Victorian Treasures book is that I like to work with two-sided pages, so wherever there's one side, I do some sort of stenciling or printing or something on the side. So this is just a little bit of sari silk and some, a lot of the book has shades of, a little bit of shade of purple in it. Most of the papers, some of the paper is thick and then some of it's thin, so you can have different weights to work with. I prefer to use at least 24 pound for writing and for journaling. And most of the papers are coffee, or well, all the papers are coffee or tea dyed, stained in some way. So wherever I wasn't able to put anything to add thickness to the book, I did put a little torn off tag that I put the little around the distress around it, and then just it's glued it on there so that it can be used, that the book can be used for various journaling. Where I live, we have tons of libraries, because we have quite a few universities in this area, the Triangle of North Carolina. And so one of the things that when one of the libraries went digital, they got rid of their card catalog. So all of these are authentic and real, and I've got I was able to pick up quite a few of those. So again, you can see where I did color coordinated sort of stenciling on here. As a part of the library, they also had quite a few of these. They're from the National Gallery of Art, and this is actually a Holbein painting of Edward VI when he was a child. And I have many more of these that somebody cut out and collected, and maybe they were in a stack for people to look at. But I picked those up, and I'm able to put them in journals and use them, you know, as tags. Here's a little tag that has pictures of various, you know, English buildings. This is the Stonehenge. It shows the type of roof that's popular. Anyway, you can look through that and see. And then I have a big tag here, and then over here is another little where I have done some more stenciling. And moving through some more. This is some of the places that you can journal. This is a Bargello. I found a neat book on all about Bargello, and I thought, well, I can make these into bookmarks. So I have done that, made that into a bookmark. Just some more cards for journaling. Again, I have 38 of these that you can pull out and use. And in these old books that I have, there's a part of them that have all kinds of advertisements. Okay, here it is in the back. And not very many of these but some of them are. So these are advertisements that you would see, and here's one I've cut up in the magazines of those of the time gone by. And so I have actually cut them out and backed them, and some of them, you know, in time gone by, when an advertising person was putting it together a layout, they would have some sort of border on it. Well, these didn't have borders on it, and I was very fortunate. I ran into a publishing book store that was getting rid of a lot of things, and they had these really neat border tape, and you actually, that's what they did back in time gone by. They, to get their advertisements to have a border on them, you know, before they went and were printed, they would, you know, they would put some sort of border around it. So that's what I did on any of them that didn't have, you know, borders. Here's an example of an old one that it actually already has the border on it. So those are the kinds that I don't need to put a border around. But for the most part, I try to put the borders around them. More advertisements. This is on when Hooks and Eyes first came into being. It was kind of a cute little saying from an old dictionary that came from the old home place from my great aunt. It's called the New Century Dictionary. It was published in 1927, and she actually has, Emily Holmes, she has her name in 1938. So again, but it says here that it was 1927 when it was published, and she was a college professor, so obviously she would have, you know, a dictionary to use in her classes. So here we did some fun sewing on this particular one. If you could see how I just kind of played around with the sewing to color coordinate. This is just a little tag. More of the pages of that Victorian Treasures. This is something English. It's words and phrases, how they would say it in American English and how it is said in British English. For instance, we might say they're all booked up, and they might say, and they would say something like fully booked. we might call it a cafe and they would call it a coffee shop. And we might call it a cell phone and they might call it a mobile phone. So it's just really interesting how the different languages change. And more tags and just sort of a little collage put together here. I don't know if you are familiar with these, but these are little notes of gratitude that you can buy by the box. And here's just an example of one that I put together, that I found. It's called Carpe Diem, and on the inside it has lots of little cards like this that you can stick in and use as a note or inside a card or something like that. This particular company is called Compendium, but the other one that I found that has all of these in them is called it's called Notes of Gratitude. Leave behind notes to brighten anyone's day. And it's called Gratitude, let's see, Gratitude Always is what that's called. So more tags. Oh, I don't know who started this, but I thought it was a neat idea, and I found it on someone's YouTube channel. I've done that a couple of places so that journaling can be done. This is just a tag that I put together that came from a book. Jane Austen loved to read, and she was a book person. It kind of goes with her personality since she wrote so many, so I have to include something about reading. And this is just a little book to take with you. I tried to include little trinkets where I could, and being an England lover, or as my daughter calls me, an Anglophile, this is Baconsthorpe Castle. So I have gotten into collecting pictures of castles, and this one is in Norfolk. It's a 15th century manor, and this tells you some information about it. So there's just a little extra something in there for you to read about and enjoy. Again, some more tags with various kinds of lace and sari silk and such. This is the information about this. This is the book. And then this is the actual information about it's called An Old Rug of Kurdistan, and I just printed it out of the book so that you could read a little something about the particular rug. And including with every book is some pages from some of these magazines that I've collected. And when I was in London last year, they had all the subways had a brochure that had poems from different people from England in them, and that is what this is. And then as a part of a collection at the Scrap Exchange in 1875, Peterson's magazine had I guess the person who was collecting these in whatever library was collecting some pictures and had them in files or something. But anyway, there was this huge stack of them, and I just could not pass them up. But the pages are so thin and frayed that I actually sewed 2 pages together so that maybe they could last a little bit longer. At the end of each book, or included in the packet, I always try to include something extra, and that is I don't have any room in this book to do it, but included in the package will be some items that maybe couldn't fit in here. So this is the Kurdistan. It will be on my Etsy store, Yesterdaysstash. And I appreciate your coming along with me through this journey of junk journaling, and I appreciate your taking the time to watch.